Thank you, everybody. I could not have hoped for a more warm and kind welcome. Thank you for numerous people who got up on stage today to welcome me to this school. Now, Scopus, my name is Dan Sztajt, and I cannot tell you with how much pride and how excited I am to be standing here today in front of the entire campus. The reason for that is this school has always been incredibly special to me. I began at this school, in fact on this campus, when I was 3 years old. We used to have a kinder here. And that saw me all the way through, after 15 years, to then be like these Year 12s up the front here and graduate. After a number of years studying, doing many other things, working in different places, I was lucky enough to come back to this school to work. And a handful of people get to do that. They get to have the experience of Mount Scopus as a student and learn and grow and build friendships that you are going to retain for the rest of your lives, and then have the opportunity to come back and provide that to the next generation is something that is very, very special. I'm thankful for it all the time, and I want to thank each and every one of you for welcoming me so that I can experience all of this once again. Thank you. Now, as you would have already been told, let me see if this works. Work forever, cannot. As you I'm going to stand over here. This works better. I always used to walk out and somehow you could be heard everywhere. Anyway, as everyone knows, this is a very, very special year. This is the 75th year of our incredible school. But it's at these moments that we actually want to stop and have a little bit of a think about what that means. What does it mean to have 75 years of an institution like Scopus that has welcomed communities from across the world, that has made sure that we are a place that allows new people to come in from all over Melbourne, from all over Australia, and from all over the world. This school was set up with a purpose, and it's kind of crazy to think. This school was set up in 1949. If you were to try and pick in 4,000 years of Jewish history, when the oddest time to look hopeful and look to the future would have been, I cannot imagine what the people who would have spent a few years planning and preparing to open this school in 1949 must have been thinking and doing this after the darkest days of Jewish history. The Shoah, the Holocaust, had literally only come to a close in 1945. It baffles me to think of the visionary ideas that someone would have to imagine that sometime in the future, 75 years from now, well after they're all gone, they imagined that there would be 1,000+ students sitting in an auditorium talking about what a brilliant place this really is. So, in order to try and grasp how huge this is, I actually think it's a lot easier, rather than trying to think of it in one whole collective, to think about one story, think about one small idea. And the one story I want to tell you of is of a Scopus student. Here is a class. Thanks. Take that right back, I can do this too. So, here is a class a couple of years into the beginning of the school. This was 1953. It's a class of grade 2 students, all very excited, all there. Look at that, they had blazers in primary back then. And they're all proudly standing there. But you may notice, and it's a bit hard to see on this screen, there's one person whose uniform looks a little bit different. I don't know if you can see it, but if you kind of have a look there, you can see that one person's uniform in the back row kind of is a different shade and it doesn't really fit in. I'd like to talk about that person. Because what's incredible about that person, his name is Felix, and Felix had only just come to the school a few weeks before that photo was taken, and he'd only come to the country a few months before that photo was taken. Felix had two parents, like many of us do. That's Sonia over there on that side, and that's Victor over there. And they had brought Felix to Australia, to Melbourne, for one reason and one reason only. They had gone through those horrendous times, the darkest days in Jewish history. They had decided that having seen their entire families gone and having no future for them left in Europe, that they would look at a world map and pick the point on the planet that was the furthest possible point they could get to away from that horror. And they picked up their young family, not having any family left over in Europe, and they came to Australia. And when they came to Australia, they had nothing. You can imagine what that's like. They get off a boat. Thankfully, there was a Jewish aid organisation there that offered and said, "Do you have any family here?" They said, "No." They said, "No problem, we've got a place for you." And they went off, they actually took them to a place in Hawthorne, a little halfway house for Jewish refugees, where they then lived for a few months in a single room with two other families until they could get themselves started. After working a day job, a night job, and a weekend job, 3 jobs, Victor was eventually able to get enough money together to be able to rent a tiny apartment for their family to live in. It was over in St Kilda in a place called Westbury Street. They had one incredible dream, which was the same dream as those founders of this school. They thought, how incredible would it be for our young son Felix to be able to be proud of being a Jew? To come out of an environment that said being a Jew was evil, was bad. You should even be killed for it. And to be able to come to this country and say, oh my God, somebody thought it was a good idea to create a school to make Jewish Australian children feel proud of who they are and stand up for who they are. They could not believe it. Sure enough, Sonia would then take little Felix onto a tram down St Kilda Road. She passed many other big old established schools. This is Wesley, by the way. Continued down until she eventually found this small little school on St Kilda Road, Mount Scopus. She walked in, she booked an appointment with the then principal, the first principal of this school, Abe Faber, sat down, and she decided she was going to plead for her son to be able to have the opportunity to be proud of his Judaism, to be a Mount Scopus student. Unfortunately, she couldn't speak a word of English. Her young son actually could speak more than her, and 7-year-old Felix had to translate for his mum, explaining and understanding that their family had no money but they wanted to come to this school. Principal Faberlin actually turned around and said, look, maybe it's a very expensive school, it's very difficult. Maybe spend a few years, settle yourself down first, and then come back to us and we'll see. Sonia said, absolutely not. My son has to grow up in a different world to what I had. He's coming to this school now. She made a commitment, an incredible commitment that I think so many families at that time made. She said, we're going to go without furniture. We may have to go without 3 meals a day, but we will, as our first priority, pay for our son to go to this school. That is the most important thing we can do for him and generations to come. And after hearing that, being translated by a 7-year-old in broken English, Felix was allowed a place at this school, and he joined in. At that meeting, he was given 2 pieces of paper, one that showed all of the stationery he had to bring on in his first day of school, and the other one showing him the uniform list, with prices next to it, which he couldn't afford. That little boy on the photo right at the beginning that I showed you with an odd-coloured uniform, why was that? Now, Felix's dad, Victor, worked in the schmutter trade, in the garment industry. And he worked next to someone who was a tailor before in Europe. And he showed him a picture of the school uniform, and he said, "Can you please make this for me, because I can't afford to buy it?" He said, "Absolutely, I can make it." And sure, every other student's blazer was a single-breasted jacket. Felix's was a double, because the tailor didn't really look closely enough, so he had a double-breasted jacket. It was different to everyone else's in the school. He tried to match the colour and kind of got the wrong shade of grey. But what's incredible is Felix took that homemade uniform, wore it every day at school proudly, and he even for the first year he was at the school wore it every single day on the weekend, because he could not believe that you were allowed to be proud to be a Jew in Australia. He would go on, he would start his schooling over here. Many of you recognise this photo. This is off the St Kilda Road campus. Over time, he would eventually learn to speak with an Australian accent. He learned Aussie rules football. His friends took him out to teach him cricket. He became acclimatised. He became an Australian Jew. He would eventually put up his hand to say that he wanted to be a part of the leadership group. Back then, they didn't call them captains, they were prefects. But he was never one for the limelight. He was not an extrovert. He didn't want to be out there. He was always behind the scenes working hard. You can actually see him there, right up the back. Yeah, they had little caps back then. And there he is with the same principal who let him in when he was 7 years old. Probably recognise the steps outside the admin area of our school right now. This is when they moved across to Burwood. There he is again, right up the back there. This is the 1963 house plays, where his house, which he was the house captain of, actually won an award. It happened to be Monash, by the way. So Monash is there winning the award for the house plays. What's so incredible is that in speaking with Felix, I can tell you, he was incredibly proud of what he was able to do. This school gave him the skills, abilities, technical knowledge, and feeling to go out and be a proud Australian Jew and make something of himself. He became quite a sports star. He loved his Aussie rules. He actually went out and became a professional boxer for a short period of time straight after school, and then got recruited by the St Kilda Football Club and played reserves for St Kilda for a little while. But for him, he had to go straight into the family business. By that stage, his father had become a jeweller and had taught him to be a jeweller. He would then go off and start his own businesses. He'd eke out a living. But he'd proudly say that the moment that he knew he had made it as an Australian Jew was the moment that he was able to enrol his own 3 children into Mount Scopus and give them the opportunity that he was given, that he was gifted. Spoke to him recently and he actually said that used to be his proudest moment, but he had a new proudest moment. And it was actually this year, and it's actually today. The reason why he has such a proud moment is this is the year that together with his son would be able to send his 3 children to start Mount Scopus today for their first day of school here. So we have about 197 new students starting at Scopus today. 3 of them are my own children and Felix's grandchildren. We have an incredibly proud history at this school. When I think of what it must have been like to be a kid that couldn't speak the language, wore funny clothes, the wrong uniform, didn't know anything about being in Australia, and the fact that he was welcomed, embraced, treated fairly and kindly, and off the back of that was able to create an entire family that called this place home, I'm impressed. Because when I think of Scopus, I think of building Kehila, building our community, because that is what it has proudly done for 75 years. You heard Kate speak about it before, that we have this incredible new theme for you this year, but I want you to understand it and I want you to understand what we're going to live. These 3 words, to feel welcomed, to feel valued, and to feel appreciated. What I'd like you to do is this. Every single person here has a responsibility. Like I said, we have about 197 new students at this school. Everyone's job is to make those students feel welcome. I want you to do what Felix's friends at school did for him. Bring them in. Bring them into your social circle. At recess straight after this, I want you to make them feel welcomed. I want them to come and play the game, the chat, the circle, whatever it is that you're in, you're bringing these new students in. You are making them feel welcomed. But it's not just about new people. We're an incredible community for those of us that have been here for many, many, many years. And what I want us to think about exactly there is, how do you make someone feel valued? How do you make someone feel that their ideas, what they think, is actually important? You listen to them. You actively listen. You don't talk over someone else in class. You don't put down their ideas online. You make sure that you become the sort of person where people are happy to share with you because they know you're not going to shoot them down. That's what it means to create a community where people feel valued, that they matter. Finally, in terms of feeling appreciated, every school has challenges. There's always a person who may not feel great themselves, not great about who they are or what they are or where they've come from, and they feel the best way to help themselves is to put others down. We've all seen people like that. It happens. Sometimes we've even been the people like that. We can all properly look at ourselves and know that. But if we can create a school community where before you say the nasty comment, before you do what would later be described when you're sitting in someone's office being told this student bullied another student, before that, if we all stopped and thought for a moment and said, how do I actually make people feel appreciated instead of putting them down? The type of school we can have will be something that those founders in 1949 would be incredibly proud of, that their vision continued. When I was at school, we welcomed in hundreds of kids from the former Soviet Union, from Russia, Ukraine, that entire area. I'm not so sure if I was always so kind to them. Some of them were my friends, but it took time. Later on as a teacher, I remember a huge number of South African students coming to our shores and joining our school. And that felt really good that we could give them another home. But I was never more proud than the end of last year when I heard what this school did for the Israeli community in their time of need. And the number of Israeli children that came to this school, and we opened up our arms and we said, you have a second home here and we're going to help you. Be that school. Be that student that makes a kehillah, where every single person here, from every school day, from now to the end of the year, from now till the next 75 years, everyone, when they think of Scopus, thinks of a place where they're going to feel welcomed, valued, and appreciated. Now, in terms of showing a sense of appreciation, it behooves me to make sure that I mention one more thing. I am standing in a shadow of a giant, and I've purposely chosen this photo because it happens to be a photo of the very first photo that Rabbi James Kennard had done at this school. He happens to be exactly the same age as I am now. Odd feeling. Rabbi James Kennard was a giant at Mount Scopus. He was the second longest standing principal. Only Abe Fagelin, the first principal, beat him out by 3 years. His mark on this school has been tremendous. Many of you don't even realise the sorts of benefits you have at this school today because of him. I don't know how many of you knew this, but he absolutely loved technology and he wanted to make sure Mount Scopus was always at the forefront of technological advancement. He created many different programs in this school. When I was at school, very few people went on UPAN. Now it's almost every single person in Year 10 goes off. That was him. The creation of the DC, and the list goes on. There are so many things that he has done for this school, and I think it's important that we show our appreciation for 17 years of incredible service and what this incredible man, this incredible rabbi, this incredible principal has done for us. So if you'll join me, I'd like to give a round of applause to our officers. Finally, I want to thank you for indulging me with what was a very long story, but I do want to say thank you to Horaba, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I am very much looking forward to a wonderful year of learning, of work, but of course of celebration of this school's 75th. How's that, very much?